Welcome to this week's episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I'm Morgan, and I'm really excited to talk with you today about something that I learned in my anatomy and physiology class. It blew my mind and is making me think about emotional eating so differently. So, before I get into the episode, though, I just want to tell you about this little guy. If you are just listening to this, I'm holding in my hand a little plastic 2 inch by 2 inch block that says brick on it. For a long time, have been so frustrated by my seemingly inability to manage my own phone use, particularly during times when I really should be doing other things. So I got this little device that pairs with an app on your phone in which you can uh, turn apps on and off, their availability on and off. And so you like leave this little plastic physical thing in your house somewhere, and then you have to open the app. I'm just going to show you since I'm on here. Um, you open the app on your phone. I think you can see it. And then you can customize which apps you want to have available to you when your phone is bricked. So I have turned off, like when I have my phone bricked, I cannot have access to any of my socials. There's a little workaround where you can't access Safari. I still can get onto my text messages, phone, maps, like my bank accounts, those kinds of things, but you get to select which apps you want to not have access to when your phone is bricked. So you tap the little button and then you tap it to the physical device and it makes those apps inaccessible to you. So if you can see on here, I have like some of my apps that are darkened out so you can't get into them. What I love about this is that you can't unbrick your phone until you are physically by that little thing. So I have been using it, like I'll put my little brick device on my refrigerator and I'll brick my phone before I do like a study session. I will brick my phone before I leave the house if I want to make sure that I'm not just like wasting time on social media. Like I put a book in my car. So now that I can't get on my phone and scroll when I have, 15 minutes where I have to wait in the car for something, I'll read my book instead. I still listen to podcasts, but it has greatly reduced my time on social media. Oh, I'm using it too before I go to bed because I have my phone in my bedroom for my alarm clock and often will just scroll way too late. And I am like, I don't want to use my phone before I go to bed. And so if I have it on my refrigerator and I brick my phone and I go down to my bedroom, I don't want to get out of bed again just to go, it just puts like another resistance point between for me to not get onto my phone and spend mindless minutes/hours scrolling on my phone. It's been so helpful. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's not a subscription based thing, which I really love. And I think the brick was like $39 or $40 maybe. And you can use it for multiple phones. So I mean, it was a great investment for me. It's been really, really helpful. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I think it's still like a fairly new product because I got a little note in the mail with it that said, thanks for being an early adopter. And I was like, oh, I'm an early adopter, but such a cool idea. And it's been really, really helpful to me. So if that's something that you're struggling with and you've been looking for a solution, that's a good one. Anyway, so today's episode, I'll tell you how I came about this. So I'm taking a class. I have to take a science class with a lab as part of my, prerequisites. And then so I decided to take anatomy and physiology. And I had to look up what physiology meant. I don't really know what this means. Anatomy is basically like the equipment, the body parts, and the physiology is how they work together with other systems. And so in this class, this term, we are studying the nervous system. And I will also admit to you that for some reason, I thought that the nervous system, like that you only had, I was aware that the nervous system, like you have nerves all throughout your body, but I didn't, when I thought about like neurons, I was like, oh, that's just in your brain because, if you go see a neurologist, they focus mostly on what's happening in your head, but you have neurons all throughout your nervous system. And there are two parts to your nervous system, which are your central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal cord, and then your peripheral nervous system, which is everything that connects to the spinal cord, but that goes out and innervates all of your muscles and is responsible for the sensations that you get through touch, temperature, seeing things, all that type of stuff. Those are your receptors as part of your peripheral nervous system. And then you also have your enteric nervous system, which is in charge of your digestive system, which is pretty cool because, as a little side note, which does tie into what I'm talking about today, but you have just as many neurons in your gut as you do in your brain, which is why many people have talked about your gut being like a second brain. So fascinating. And it's just the more that I learn about body systems, the more that I learn about not just how our mind works, but how our body works, not only have I become more in love with this amazing piece of machinery that we get to operate, this amazing body that we get to have. I have so much more love and care for it, but I also have like a better understanding of why I do what I do. So when we have these behaviors like scrolling on my phone into the wee hours of the morning and I don't want to, I love understanding what exactly is happening in my body, what exactly is happening on a nervous system level that is contributing to these behaviors, and how do I change them? Because the more that I understand why things happen the way that they do, the less judgmental I can be of myself for why it's happening that way. And then I also have tools that can address things in a new way. So I grew up like, this doesn't have to be particularly in like a religious context, because I think that even without that, many of us think of like the seven deadly sins and one of them being gluttony, and there's like such a stigma around obesity, being overweight. There's a huge stigma about laziness and lack of self-control. And that's like the narrative that I grew up with, was like, if you're overweight, it's because you're lazy. It's because you don't have discipline. All of these things that just create such a feeling of shame in someone. And for people who aren't necessarily overweight, but still struggle with feeling like a lack of self control and feeling so much self judgment and shame around that, I think what I'm talking about today will be very helpful to you and enlightening to you. So, we were talking in my A&P class about the two branches of the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system, you can kind of just think of as like the automatic things. So the things that are happening in your body that you don't have to be aware of, you don't have conscious control over these things, like your breath or your heartbeat or your tummy gurgling or moving food along your digestive tract or knowing that you need to take a shit. These are all things that are happening without your conscious awareness. They're part of your autonomic nervous system. And the two branches of your autonomic nervous system are your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. I know for sure that most of you have heard of these already, but in different terms. So your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. So it's the stress response, there's danger out there and I have to respond by having my pupils dilate, my heart rate increase, having additional resources and nutrients available to my muscles in case I got to get the hell out of here. Okay, so that is your fight or flight. That is your sympathetic nervous system. On the flip side, your parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest, which is in charge of putting your body in a relaxed state in order to digest the things that are in your body. So this contributes to nutrient absorption. This contributes to your digestive system moving along. And this is, I mean, a great way to explain this is when you are in fight or flight, all of your digestive stuff slows down because it's not going to be helpful to you if you are trying to run away from a predator and you have to stop to take a dump. Okay, so those systems all shut down in service of making sure that it can get you to your nervous system can get you to safety. So when we are in a stress state, our bodies are not interested in getting into the rest and digest. The how it feels to be in the fight or flight state does not feel good. It doesn't feel good to have your heart rate up. It doesn't feel good to have adrenaline pumping through your body or epinephrine. So you've got these two glands that sit on top of your kidneys that are called your adrenal glands. Adrenal, like adrenaline, right? They release hormones that have to do with being able to get your body into that fight or flight state. So one of the hormones that it releases is I'm not going to say this correctly. Why am I not going to say this correctly? Glucocorticoids, which is a steroid. And a type of glucocorticoid is cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that is helping your body be in this state of fight or flight. Okay, so here's where the aha came in and the point of everything that I'm talking about today. These systems, your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system, are kind of always doing this dance back and forth. They're trying to keep your body in homeostasis. Our bodies love it when everything is balanced. So, when there's a release of a certain chemical or hormone, there are other ones that respond to that. And there's all of these like feedback loops in our bodies happening all the time that can contribute to our body just working to get to this good balanced state for what in whatever way is appropriate to respond to environmental factors. Our bodies are so good at this. So when I was thinking about the dance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, I had this kind of like aha moment where I was like, "Oh, if our bodies go into a parasympathetic state when it comes to things like digestion, this makes perfect sense to me why we eat emotionally because it's like a cheat code. All right? It's like if you were playing a video game and I mean the only video game that I really will ever play is like Mario and probably not even like a current Mario but like old school Mario that it's just two-dimensional and you can only go two directions. You can't or up and down, I guess, forward and back, but you can't move around the board like you can in the newer games or Mario Kart. I'll play those ones. That's totally fine. But imagine you're playing Mario and it's a really, really hard, stressful level. You're about to meet the boss. You're about to meet Bowser, go through all these like fire things or the things that are going to fall on you, the womps or whatever they are. My son would know all the terminology for this. Okay, so you've got this really stressful level, but you know where the door is that you can go in, or I guess maybe it would be a warp pipe if we're talking about this Mario metaphor. You know where the secret warp pipe is to help you bypass all of those really stressful things. That is kind of like what eating is. If we are in this elevated stress state, so we're in this sympathetic nervous system state and we are stressed out and cortisol is pumping through our bodies and we don't feel great, we have figured out a way, our bodies have figured out a way to get into the parasympathetic state by inducing inducing flipping into that parasympathetic state by eating. So if we put food in our mouths, it signals to our bodies, "Oh, like I don't need to be running from anything right now. There's nothing in my environment that I can cognitively see that is putting me in this fight or flight state. So we're pushing ourselves into this parasympathetic state. And I don't think any of us are doing this intentionally. The wisdom of our bodies, though, is like we just have observed that if I'm really stressed and I eat something, I feel better. This is why. because it's a cheat code to bump us from that fight or flight state into rest or digest. When we're in the rest or digest state, everything relaxes in our body. Everything that was tight and clenched and holding everything in is relaxing. That's why part of the reason why it feels so good to eat. There's a lot of other things that are happening behind the scenes with other chemicals and neurotransmitters and hormones that come online when we eat. But this, just for the sake of this conversation about why we emotionally eat, this was like a light bulb moment for me. It makes so much sense why when I'm stressed, sometimes like I feel like this compulsion to go look through my cupboards and to put things in my mouth, and like why when I'm really stressed I just feel like I can't not eat the whole bag of whatever it is, you know? So I think that this is our body's way of trying to bump ourselves out of these stress states by eating. Now, the problem is that if we don't address our chronic stress, then we can very easily slip into some kind of, I don't want to say disordered eating, but that might be an okay term to use here. And I would define it as any eating that is mindless eating, and eating where we're eating when we're not hungry, or eating in excess of calories way more than we actually need, way more than our bodies need. And I don't in any way, shape or form want to demonize eating or eating for pleasure or eating when we're not hungry or social or eating or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But what I am talking about is the mindlessness that comes when we emotionally eat as a way to reduce our stress. So I did want to talk today about not just why this is so amazing that our bodies do this. So as a way to appreciate our body's coping skills, our body's way of trying to get us into homeostasis, like that is so smart. That's so smart that our bodies do that. So to introduce this understanding of the wisdom of our bodies and also to unshame ourselves. So at the very beginning of the episode when I was just talking about like how appreciative I am to learn these things about my body because it helps me unshame behaviors and it helps me understand things from a physiological perspective instead of what maybe would be just from an emotional perspective or sometimes even a spiritualized perspective where I'm told that my body's bad or that my body is my enemy. The more that I learn about it, the more I realize like, no, 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 we're working on this together here. We are teammates, we are partners, and I don't want to feel like my body is my enemy or that my body is something to control at all. I don't think that that's helpful. So when we understand that we might be using emotional eating as a cheat code to bypass stress, there's a couple of things that are going to be helpful if we want to be more mindful of that cycle. There are, like I said, if we don't address our chronic stress state, that's kind of when we can get ourselves into trouble. And not just when it comes to eating, but we know from study after study after study, there is piles of data and piles of evidence that say that stress is one of the worst things for our bodies. But we don't often like it's one thing to say, yeah, I know stress is bad for my body, but what the hell do I do about that? Like my life is stressful. So I wanted to share with you some things to do to address our stress, some of which have to do with when we address our stress with eating, but just in general, how to address this chronic stress state that all of us are in. So, what to do when we feel like eating when we're stressed? Number one, still eat something. That's a great tool, and introduce mindfulness into it. So if you are stressed and you're like, I really want to eat this right now, okay, eat it, but slow down. A lot of times, like if I eat something because I'm stressed, I am just like scarfing it down. I'm not even paying attention to how it feels in my mouth, how it tastes, or whatever. I'm just like, and so if you introduce mindfulness to eating when you're stressed out, you are not just addressing this like physiological reaction to the thing that you're eating, but you're also consciously becoming aware of being in the present moment, which is the number one way to reduce stress, because stress lives in our minds and our bodies when we are anticipating things that we don't have control over. Stress happens when we are not aware of like what we can do to take care of something, or we have too many things on our mind or whatever. And so getting ourselves into the present moment with mindfulness goes a really long way in reducing stress. So still eat the thing, but just do so mindfully. Address your emotional state as you're eating. When you're putting the chip in your mouth, take a breath, put the chip in your mouth and feel what it feels like in your mouth. Do you feel texture on it? Is there saltiness? Is there like a savory taste? Feel what it feels like to crunch in your teeth. Pay attention to how it feels when you swallow. Imagine it going down into your stomach. Sometimes I like to imagine um food breaking down into nutrients that my body then is using for all sorts of other things. Introducing a mindfulness to it. And you're also, when you do that, you're also taking yourself out of this, like, just this cognitive, like, knot about your circumstances. And it's bringing you back into your body. It's bringing that connection back between your mind and your body. And many people who are in this chronic stress state are they feel like they're detached from their bodies and like everything is living in their heads. And so anything that we can do, any practices that we can do that bring us back into a more intimate connection with our bodies, the better. So go ahead and do that. Another way to bring mindfulness to your stress state and to reduce your stress is meditate. If meditate is too weird for you, or like it's a weird word that brings up all of these weird feelings or whatever, you don't even have to think about it like that. You can think about it like, I'm just breathing. I'm just clearing my head. I'm just focusing my mind somewhere else right now, because really that's what meditation is. Meditation is a mindfulness of our body. Meditation is a mindfulness and paying attention to the present moment. And meditation is like stepping out of it's like stepping out of the role of considering everything and just watching yourself notice what comes and goes in your mind. So instead of being the person in there that's trying to capture all the thoughts, instead you just get to watch the thoughts come and go and swirl around. You can go for a walk. This is a great way to address your stress. Many of us think of any kind of physical activity as purely having to do with, losing weight or increasing cardiovascular health or whatever. But if we only think about it like that, we're missing out on a really important piece, that like it's not about how fast you do the walk or how many miles you do. It's again about the mindfulness piece and also getting out in nature. It's taking your perspective from very, very small when we're on our computers or on our phones and widening your gaze. That's not a small thing. To be able to physically expand your perspective in your physical world also helps your mental what your mind is focused on also helps open up to the bigger picture on things. So go for a walk. This goes right along with change your physical state to change your mental state. So sometimes I'll just like grab my jump rope and jump rope if I'm feeling stressed. And again, it's like the body movement, but it also is it's just a way to kind of bust yourself out of the funk. And it's nice to do if you have something where you're sitting at a desk a lot to get up and move around. Another one is to take a nap. I love naps so much. I have discovered for myself that a 20-minute nap is like the sweet spot. I can't do, over an hour anymore because then I don't want to get up and if somebody wakes me up, I just feel so grouchy the rest of the day. So 20 minutes for me is great. I will set my timer. I'll set my alarm for 22 or 23 minutes to give myself like a 2 or 3 minute buffer to fall asleep so that I get a good solid 20-minute nap and it's rejuvenating. Oh, along with this, another good one that gets you a lot of the benefits of taking a nap is doing yoga nidra, which is a mindfulness practice. And then the last one is chew gum. So this one goes along with what we're talking about, where if you feel like emotionally eating something, pop a piece of gum in your mouth because you get some of the same benefits by, you know, um, stimulating your salivary glands, your stomach juices, those types of things. You get some of the same benefits of that as you do if you're eating something, but you're not actually, taking in a bunch of food. So this is all I have for today. I just thought that was such an interesting way to think about why we eat when we're stressed. There's a lot of studies that have to do with, links between emotional eating and depression. And oftentimes in those papers, researchers are not really addressing it's almost like a chicken and egg problem. Like, does the overeating and perhaps subsequent weight gain, does that increase depression or does the depression lead to emotional eating? And so many of the studies that they did were with women. So, not that men don't also do this, like, I have no doubt that men do this as well, but, it seems I'm gonna speculate a little bit here because women are most, uh, stigmatized when it comes to body shape, that many of the women probably participated in these studies disproportionately to men. Um, but I wanted to hopefully encourage you that number one, that your body is not your enemy, that your body is so smart and that you are so smart to find ways, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, to get yourself out of a stress state, to get yourself out of the fight or flight because you know that it's not sustainable to be in that state for a long time. But if we're not using other ways to address this chronic stress state or to reduce our stress, not just as a result of eating, but we are creating long-term health consequences, negative health outcomes by not addressing our stress. So I wanted to just be excited with you about our amazing bodies and to offer some additional insight into the work that our bodies do to maintain homeostasis. It's all so cool. It's so cool and it's really exciting and wonderful and mysterious and amazing. So love your bodies more. Love the ways that your body and your mind have coped with stress. It's so awesome. And the more that you know, the more empowered you can be to make different choices that work better for you in the long term. You can't shame yourself into better choices. You can't shame yourself into better health. You can't shame yourself into mindfulness. You can love yourself into positive change. And that's what I wanted to do. That was my goal with being able to talk with you about this, is that it would just engender more love for yourself, more love for this amazing intricate body that we have, and to introduce a little bit of mindfulness into your life when you are feeling stressed to pay attention to the ways that you're coping with that stress, and then choosing methods that work really well for you that do help you feel better, not just in the moment, but long term. So, thanks for joining me for this episode. And before we go, PS.